Takže ahoj, ahoj, zdravím všechny na dnešním streamu. Jak se máte, chat? Už to zapínám samozřejmě trošičku se zpožděním, ale nebojte, začíná to až za 20 minut, takže pohoda. Máme to všechno naplánované, jak to má být. Tak. Už jdu na to, boys. Boys and girls, zapínám stream. Let's go. Aha. To je špatná scéna. Tak tuhle. A ještě kameru zapnu. Čau. Totálně nepřipravený, ale natáčel jsem pro vás video, takže tady mám trošku rozházané opět. Mám pocit, že kamera je ještě nesynchronizovaná, vydržte. Hlasitost na mic nemám jak přidat úplně. A nechci si to rozmrdat kvůli natáčení videí. Já spíš tlumím ten background. Tak. Pohodička. Zdravím tady Standu, Milvase, Announa, Nixofa, zdravím tady Nicky Gamer, zdravím Romana a všechny ostatní, kteří se koukáte živě nebo ze záznamu. Vítejte po dlouhé době u streamu na Diablo 4, to jsme tady dlouho neměli. Čauky Peťo, čauky, hele. Dneska budeme streamovat úplně jednoduše tohle, Campfire Chat. Měli bychom se dozvědět vlastně o čem bude 8. sezona, protože vlastně oni nám odhalujou PTR na 8. sezonu, takže de facto měli bychom se dneska dozvědět, o čem 8. sezona bude, na co se můžeme těšit nebo netěšit. Tak uvidíme. Já se dívám ze záhrobí. Jo, jak to? Čauky Acide, čauky. Jak se jinak máte? Hrajete Diablo, nehrajete Diablo, jaký hrajete RPG nebo jiné hry? Pište, trošku to rozproudíme ten chatos. Ať se dozvíme něco nového. Já dneska pro vás natáčím hru. Knížku. Knížku jsem natáčel. Hnedka vám ji ukážu. Na Diablo 4 zkoušel jsem po 2, napáčel jsem mi pár tylu drop. Když vypnout v poječku. Dneska pro vás natáčím knihu. A nevím, jestli na to mám scénu nebo ne, ale zkusím to. Je tady bordel, vydržte. Přišoupnu. Jak je na to moje webka? Kinda good. Dneska pro vás natáčím video o této knize od našeho partnera X-Zone, který vydával teďka na svůj e-shop. Pošlu vám za chvilku link do popisku. Je to vlastně ultimátní průvod se střílečkami od roku 1992 až do roku 2002. Se všema rozhovorama s autorama těch her, co tam je, a jsou tam fakt, je tam úplně všechno. Je tam vlastně od her od roku snad jako i zmínky 1973, je tam samozřejmě Wolfík, Doom, Duke Nukem, všechno. Takže už tady mám poznámky a už dělám video, který bude takový informativní, abych vám ukázal, jaký informace tam jsou, a potom se na to můžete podívat. Doporučuji, ještě jednou to ukážu. Hezká, taková jakoby lesklá obálka a je tam hrozně moc ilustrací. Takhle. Děkuji. To je bomba. Je to těžký jak svině, je tam asi, řekl bych tak 200 her, který můžeš najít, vyzkoušet. Dneska jsem to dělal, vyzkoušel jsem asi 6 FPSek starých a dokonce jsou tam zmínky i na Dungeon Crawlery, protože to vzniklo všechno ze stejného jakoby hnutí, chápeš? Protože všechno to prostě založený na labirintovém jakoby průchodu, takže tam je i zmínka o Ultima Online a o dalších prostě hrách. Je tam spousta věcí o Pac-Manovi, ale to nebudu spoilerovat, to si nechám na video. Tak. Asi jsem podle mě hodně rozmazaný, ta webkamera je taková docela nekvalitní, že? Takže já to vrátím zase zpátky na tu malou scénu, ať se radši díváte na něco jiného, než na mě. Tak. Valkyo, ahoj. To máš za webku? Furt tu stejnou. Furt tu stejnou, ale dneska si možná třeba řekla, že bude v pohodě, nebo nevím, ale neviděl jsem ten záznam, tak nemůžu říct, jestli byl rozmazaný nebo ne. Tak, jdu si to přečtět, co jste psali. A hraju Diablo 4, parádička, to jsem četl. Přestal jsem, pořád dokola, mrzí mě to, jasný, chápu, Peťo, to je úplně logický, já to mám taky, vždycky rád střídám hry různý. Jinak všechno v cájku, ale chcem zkusit, jo, sezóna 2 v Last Epochu, já na to sázím, že to bude fakt dobrý. Určitě si tady chci udělat spoustu videí. Last Epoch bohužel nikdy nebyl úplně jako silný, co se týká diváků a tak podobně, ale doufám, že vás to bude bavit, protože mě ta hra rozhodně baví. Jak to vypadá s Greedfall 2? Pokud se nepletu, tak oni z toho udělali CRPG, ne tahový, což mě úplně jinak jako odlákalo, že vlastně já jako CRPG mám rád, ale zas úplně ne tak moc, abych to vyhledával. Hraju Inquisitor Martyr. Koupil jsem. Mám koupený Milvasy, někdy se na to podíváme. Nakoupil jsem Souls hry, tak zkusím, to je jiný hardcore, to je pravda, Peťo. Doufám, že mě dnes trochu natchnou, jinak mají smůlu a jako zajetý Diablo hráč už po 2 neopustím. Rozumím, milhovníku. Hele, já jsem dneska natáčel video o Goblin eventu, který aktuálně probíhá v Diablo 4 a opět prostě taková polopráce. Udělají event, jo, je to super, spousta jako zajímavostí, ale prostě nemají ani dostatečný jako úctu k těm hráčům, aby tam přidali různý 3D modely pro různý gobliny, prostě skopírujou goblina, dají na něj jinou barvu, to mi přijde strašně vojebaný, když to tak musím říct. Rozmýšlám na Logitech Brio, já mám Logitech C922, no a je to takový už jako blbý, už bych potřeboval něco lepšího. Ale já budu objednávat počítač, to už jsem vám říkal, bude to někde nejspíš v dubnu, čekal jsem teďka na výsledky AMD karet, což už jsou jako dobrý, nejspíš půjdu do té AMDčkové karty, bohužel, jak bych to řekl. Prostě AMDčkové karty mají špatný kodeky pro streamování, takže na streamování to pořád bude na hovno. Ale na videa a na hraní her to bude super a to je pro mě důležitý, protože ty streamy za stolik nejezdíme, že jo. Takže asi to prostě takhle udělám. Zároveň na YouTube se dá streamovat s AMDčkem už na nejnovější kodeky, takže YouTube už je v pohodě, ale prostě Twitch tam pořád bude špatná kvalita, no. Čauky, zdravím Alien, CG a Edios, ahoj, ahoj. Sezona 2 přináší velmi velký a zajímavý obsah. Jo, velký a zajímavý obsah, jo to jo. Mě Goblin Event taky baví, nechápejme se špatně, určitě to není špatná věc, ale štve mě to zpracování, že prostě já jako game developer, který dělá svoji vlastní hru, na tom vidím, že to ten borec jeden, který to dostal za úkol, dělal jeden den a to bylo všechno. Chápeš, že to je strašně jako hnedka hotový. Čauky Benny, ahoj. Těším se na Titan Quest 2, no tak jasně, tak na to se těším taky, kámo, to si dáme jak pán. Už mám možná s nima spolupráci dokonce, přijali mě do nějakého svého programu, THQ Nordic, takže bychom měli mít klíče na Gothic remake, měli bychom mít klíče na Titan Quest 2 a měl bych to všechno natáčet, takže tohle je naprosto superový. Brio má v sebe 4x a možnost Windows Hello Login, vůbec nevím, co to znamená. Zkusil jsem ten event za 2 hodiny hotovo, takže dost ubohé. Jo, jakoby v tomhletom je to 100% ubohý lihovníku. Já jsem to bral z toho hlediska, že se s tím aspoň nemusím srát, když už jsem to kvůli tomu zapnul, že to je jako rychle hotový, ale jako z pohledu toho hráče, který chce mít nový obsah, tak je to ubohý. Čauky a AMO Lucy. Čau. Měli spravit to trošku jinak, že klikneš na nějaký pylon a bude časovka s milion goblinami. Hele, klidně, ale už teďka jim to servery nezvládají. Oni prostě přidali nový update, kámo, a lidem to padá ještě víc než před updatem zase. Takže to je blbý, no. Čauky Zero, ahoj. Zdravím všechny, jsem rád, že jste takhle přišli dneska v hojném počtu po dlouhé době. Já vím, že jsem teďka dlouho nestreamoval, ale snažil jsem se každý den vydávat video, což pro mě bylo jako zajímavější. abych vám dal nějaký kvalitní obsah. Teďka toho vycházelo strašně moc. Steam Next Festival, různý RPG, který testuju a tak. Už mám nějaký další nachystaný, něco mám roztočený. Takže se rozhodně máte na co těšit. Zase se budem se bavit, budeme hrát, budeme zkoušet a tak dále. No tak, 2 lidi mi napsali, co hrajou a zbytek nic moc. Tak co tady ještě se mažíte? Na co se těšíte v březnu, klidně mi napište. Máte nějakého favorita? Zkoušeli jste něco novýho? Teďka vycházel 6. Ta Diablovka. Vycházela Diablovka Dragon King the Banished, ale podle všeho to vypadá jako velký průser, protože to nikdo nenatáčí. Pár kanálů to natočilo a řekl, že to je takový jako průměrný. Hodně lidí říkalo to samé, co jsem říkal já, že tam chybí prostě impact v kombatu, že monstra vypadá, jak kdyby nedostávali damage, což je strašně jako blbý. Ale jinak to nevypadá špatně. Ahoj, event je pěkný, hledat to unikátního docela zabavá. Čauky, Borolko. Jo, věřím, já jsem toho unikátního nenašel. Upřímně, kdyby Diablo vyřešilo to padání, tak bych ho hrál asi víc, ale vzhledem k tomu, že mě frustruje to, jak mi to furt crashuje, buď to celou hru nebo komp, tak prostě čekám, až budu nový komp a pak si to třeba jakoby užiju víc, no ale uvidíme. Čekám Mafiu 4, Witcher 4, GTA 6, Expanziu, Diablo 4. Expanzi si myslím, že už bylo na internetu napsaný, že vyjde až v roce 2026. A myslím, že to bylo někdy v půlce roku, tak nějak jako první informace. Po 2 hraji, jen abych se momentálně zabavil. Chápu. Teďka jsou i na po jedničce ten event, že Legacy of Frisia, ten já hraju. Kluci mi tam teda hodně jako pomáhali, boostovali mě, protože já jsem na to absolutně neměl čas. Ale vypadá to docela zábavně, v té poje jedničce. Rozšíření na Heroes 3, pěkně lihovníku. Na klasiku, jo, jako Heroes of Might and Magic. Tak já mám 3 nejradši, kámo. A hraješ jaký rozšíření s tím Factory městem, jak tam je? Takový to steampunkový, nebo jaký si stáhnul? Protože oni jsou nějaký modovaný nový totiž. A ty jsem ještě neskoušel. Ale těším se moc na Heroes of Olden Era, jak bude ta nová jakoby hra, která to hodně kopíruje, kdyby, nebo já nevím, jestli je to remake, asi ne. V tomhle nemám problém, že by mi to padlo, já hrozně, no, ale a dokonce nejsem sám, ono tam je prostě nějaký problém od této sezóny. Ale věřím, že jak budu mít nový komp, tak už to nebude dělat, ale uvidíme. Tomhle nemám, jasně, čekám na Doom a Metal Gear Solid Delta, pěkně. Jo, tak to 26 level se dneska, no ne dneska, ale dej si odběr a podívej se na video, který budu vydávat. Zrovna jsem to tady ukazoval, ukážu to ještě jednou, protože vás asi přišlo spousta nových. Tak ještě tady malá reklamní vsuvka. Budu točit video o této knize od X-Zonu, našeho partnera. Najdete ji samozřejmě na webovkách a můžete nakoupit přes můj popisek tady streamu. Nebo když si napíšete vykřičník X-Zone, tak vám to hodí odkaz. A je to ultimátní průvodce střílečkama od 1992 po 2002. Spousta obrázků, spousta rozhovorů, zajímavých her, inspirací, co hrát a o tom budu točit teďka videjko, takže se máte na co těšit. Tak, budeme mít i nějaký soutěže kolem toho. Nejspíš. Už něco domluvám pro členy, takže nebojte se. Něco tam bude. Lacike, čauko, stále pátových Zeldě, keď pozriem, kde je v Guildě online, tak většinou hráme 1-2, dokud je 30 lidí, všetci čekáme na nový obsah. Je to tak? Je to tak. Hraju klasiku, nice. Ako se ti daří z Mercenary? Abych se přiznal, Lacike, vůbec jsem teďka na pátových Zeldě nešáhl. Měl jsem, že jo, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 a spoustu prostě dalších her, co jsem natáčel na kanále, hlavně informativní videa. Já spíš jako, mě spíš baví to natáčení a zkoušení, jako takže teď jsem vůbec nehrál v podstatě. Jenom jsem hledal informace, zkoušel jsem si vždycky třeba nějakou hru, ale jako nic jsem jako neexpil nějak hardkorově. My jsme Marko spolu hráli, to já vím. Já hrám ten event na pátových za 1, zahrám Diablo 4 Goblinů, samozřejmě se těším na Titan Quest 2 a plánuju kupovat nový Doom a potom Borderlands 4. Ten nový Doom se mi hodně líbí, když já teda osobně jsem nikdy nebyl úplně takový ten jako se tomu říká, no ten FPS guy prostě jako, ale teď, jak jsem dneska právě říkal, jak jsem natáčel, zkoušel jsem asi 6 her starých a docela mě to bavilo a dokonce jsem se právě díval i třeba na Ultima Underworld, protože to s tím souvisí úzce jakoby s tím vývojem těch FPS her a tak to jsem taky hrál asi půl hodiny a jo, to bavily mě tyhle ty hry starý, no. Hrál jsem Dooma, hrál jsem Duke Nukem, Wolfenstein 3D, Quake, Half-Life, dneska všechno. Vždycky jenom třeba půl hoďky, ale bylo to fajn. Mě zabavil Need for Speed Heat. Pěkně. Já jsem si Need for Speed chtěl jako strašně dlouho koupit, ale mě upřímně sere, jak oni tam mají ten svůj debilní launcher. A jako když prostě to chci třeba na Steam Deck, kde bych to jako bral, tak jsou s tím jako zbytečný komplikace a tak, takže zatím jsem jako hrál Wreckfest na Steam Decku, což je něco jako Flatout. A jako jinak auta mě nejvíc bavily Burnout Paradise The Ultimate Box, to bylo za mě asi nejlepší racing hra, nejlepší soundtrack, nejlepší drifty, jako spíš takhle laděnej. Hele, já se zajdu ještě vysmrkat. Nebo nezajdu, já tady mám kapesník, tak vydrž. Tady jenom mutenu mikrofon. Tak, to bychom měli. Tak, máte nějaké předpovědi, co by mohla být 8. sezóna? Já jsem slyšel informace, že by se měl vrátit snad Zoltan Kul. To znamená, že by možná obnovili věci ze 3. sezóny, tuším, byla to 3. sezóna, už si nejsem jistý. Že by vrátili Volty a Pasti. Jsou nějaký takový jako dohady na netu, není jistý, jestli je to pro tuhle sezónu nebo pro nějaký další sezóny, ale spekuluje se o tom. Tak. Já myslím, že jsme jako reálně jediný český kanál, který aktuálně streamuje ten, ne? Ten Campfire chat. Uvidíme, no. O to strašně klesl zájem, to je úplně... zvláštní vidět. Tak, co pak máme na Twitch Prime? Na Twitch Prime je Mafia 2, Definitive Edition, Saints Row, Remastered, Dungeon Master, Deus Ex, Human Revolution a Yes, Your Grace. Ještě nějaký další věci. Cool. Osobně bych si přál krávy, no to bychom si přáli asi všichni, no, jako krávy byly super, ale... Jako nějak se to úplně nedaří tomu Blizzardu tam přidat. Počkej, máme na Twitchi správně pojmenovaný vůbec stream? Nejsem jistý. Jo, máme. Dobrý. Tak. Most Wanted se ještě dál umřel to až tím, že si točil ty kartičky, za které si bral upgradey. Co takhle, takový ty další hry už jsem nehrál, já jsem taky skončil někde u Most Wantedu, takže do té doby mě to vlastně bavilo, ale pak už jako vůbec nevím. Ale Most Wanted byly super, no. Undergroundy jsem hrál, jedničky, dvojky asi Hot Pursuit, tak nějak se to četlo, no, tak to jsem hrál taky. To byly jedny z těch prvních. Bylo dobrý, no. Byl zase Mephisto, ale ve své božské podobě a Diablo bude v expanzi 3. No, to je klidně možný. Paladin, Raid. No, jako Paladin určitě nebude v této sezóně. Raid novej do... Že by byl novej raid jakoby do Dark Citadely, to je možný. Tak. Uniky, novej boss, power síla, buff. Snad se boostne Swordska. No, to už říkají asi 7 sezon, že ji boostujou, ale nikdy jim to nevyšlo. Že by dával něco z předchozí sezon, no jsou takový spekulace na netu, ale není jistý, jestli to bude teď, nebo jestli to přijde až třeba jako později. Čau, mohli by udělat v budoucnu, že bychom si mohli vybrat sami nějakou tu sezonu Diablu? Tak to si skoro myslím, že nehrozí. Ale jako... Bral bych to, že? Ale jako víš, jak to s nima, no. Zahraj si potom moju hru, keď ji dokončím, něco na styl Dino Blaster. Vůbec nevím, co je Dino Blaster, ale potenciálně si ji můžu zahrát, jasně. Někdy na streamu nebo tak. Nějakou vyvíš, jo? Tady potom pošli nějaké webovky nebo něco. Nebo k nám na Discord pošli nějaký obrázky a tak. Nové mytiky. Že byl nový mytik? 7. sezonu žádný nepřibyl podle mě, ale jako proč ne, že? Myslíš asi Payback, hej, to byla jiná, točit automat. To už jsem nehrál, no já už jsem nehrál žádný ty nový díly. Očekávám Unlock Horadic Cube. Tak to očekáváš podle mě marně. To jako... Mám videa o tvorbě hry? Nice. Já o svý hře zatím žádný videa nemám, já jsem moc stydlivý na to. Ale někdy to třeba přijde. To už taky říkám tak 2 roky. Ale teď jsem dělal AI. V mojí hře NPCčka reagujou na poškození, mají dialogy, můžeš je léčit, můžeš u nich nakupovat, můžeš, že mají frakce, takže prostě se jim mění postavení k tobě, jestli mají rádi nebo nemají. A můžeš je okrádat a na to reagujou. Mají denní cykly, chodí do práce, chodí spát, mají nějaký volno, kdy si můžou dělat co chcou. Interagují s prostředím, můžou si sednout na židle nebo sbírat kitky a tak dále. To interagování s prostředím je jenom fakeový, takže jako fyzicky ty kitky nezbírají, ale no, to jsem teďka dělal ve svý hře. Mohl bych přidat události z Diabla 2? No, to nevím, jak myslíš, protože Diablo 2 se odehrává před plácnu jako x 100 lety, jakože chápeš. To by prostě nefungovalo časově. To říkáte na Throne and Liberty? Hele, úplně na začátku jsem se o to zajímal, ale pak mě to přestalo zajímat, protože to má takovej World of Warcraft feeling a já jakoby nemám rád ten kombat z toho World of Warcraft, takže...
Hello Diablo community, welcome to another Diablo 4 Campfire Chat. This is our PTR Campfire Chat for Season 8. My name is Adam Fletcher, I'm the Director of Community here. Of course, I'm joined by this panel. A lot of familiar faces. Do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Colin Feiner. I'm a design director on Diablo 4.
Hey, I'm Derek Nunez. I'm a lead seasons designer here on Diablo 4.
And hi, I'm Charles Dunn. I'm a class designer working on the final design team.
Awesome.
Slyšíte
And we're
dobře?
also joined by Ruben Marquez, aka Bloodshed. He's actually behind the scenes. He'll be playing through some gameplay that we're going to be showing off here in a little bit. Oh, there he is. He's saying hi, waving. We'll see more of him here in a little bit when with maybe not Marak dancing more. We got to see a good minute and a half of him before the stream actually started. Crazy day. First, I do want to start off with that we had a smoothie delivery this morning, and Marcus is not here, as you can see. I'm here posting.
No, nás nezajímá, kdo tam je, chlapi. Čup. Teď se jenom představujou.
I'm like, oh, my smoothie's not here. But either way, we have a lot to talk about regarding Season 8. Important things. And that's actually the end of the stream, so that's all I wanted to bring up. We have a lot to talk about for Season 8 PTR, but I know a few other topics that we wanted to hit on was kind of related to some of the quality of life stuff that's going to be coming with this specific season based off of, you know, feedback.
Nějaký quality of life přijde.
And also one big topic is around mid-season updates.
A taky mid-season update bude teďka.
And we do want to give a little bit of an update on like what mid-season updates will be going forward and how we're kind of thinking about it from here. So
nebo jako spíš prej, co to znamená mid-season update a co to bude znamenat pro hru v budoucnu. Takže tuhle season bych nic nečekal.
Originally, when we had talked about mid-season, it was pretty early in the life cycle of Diablo 4. We would add a ton of items, and we do sort of envision doing a lot of big swings in terms of big nerfs to overperforming builds and big buffs to underperforming builds. But as we've seen, we've added more progression and things like Season 4 itemization. There's a lot more time investment in terms of getting your build online and really refining and optimizing it. And what we found is when you put so much time into your character, it feels really bad when we nerf things, right? So Season 6 is a great example where you might have done so much work to temper your gear and masterwork your gear and level up your paragons that we were really hesitant to do like a big nerf swing.
Nechcou dělat velký nerfy, protože by to lidem jako pojebalo buildy, který si dělají dlouho. Takže v těch mid-season updatech jako nebudou žádný velký balanční věci, to víme, to už řekli tak 100krát v rámci těch campfire chatů.
So what we ended up doing was actually kind of like anemic number tweaks. Like they weren't really necessarily making a big impact. And we took a step back and sort of asked ourselves like, well, what are we actually getting out of this? What are you, the players, actually getting out of this? And I think we're at a sort of point where we want to pivot and adjust our philosophy a little bit. And I think we've already seen some of the.
So nějak změnit tu filozofii ohledně těch updateů.
Yeah, exactly. I know, especially in the beginning of the season, people probably saw us make some tweaks in the first couple weeks related to some really crazy numbers that. Maybe they weren't even numbers in some of the stuff that people saw in the start of the actual season.
Yeah. So all that is to say, I think really what we're going to start taking a look at is not doing massive swings in the mid-season, but instead focusing our efforts on the launch of a season. So we're going to take that time and we're going to make sure that like there's a much higher
takže v podstatě říkají, že v mid-season se nebudou věnovat balancování, protože radši přesunou svoji sílu a čas na začátek sezóny, kdy chcou, aby to bylo všechno jako optimální, aby v mid-season nemuseli nic jako hodně upravovat. Takže jako v překladu nám řekli, že mid-season updaty budou o ničem a že žádný nebudou.
Early on, we're going to be pretty vigilant in terms of things that are underperforming or way overperforming and acting quickly on them.
Yeah, the goal here is really to get everything closer in terms of like just like less egregious.
Třeba nás ještě překvapí, jo? Třeba ještě řeknou, že v mid-season updateu místo toho budou přidávat nový itemy nebo něco, ale zatím jsem nic takového neslyšel. Zatím jenom slyším, že budou přesouvat sílu z mid-season updateu na začátek.
You know, my build is like, you know, 30, 40 pitches.
Jo, Baliene, to tak.
So the goal is really to kind of bring and keep things more aligned, especially at the start of the season. So as Colin mentioned, in the first couple weeks, I know there's going to be more effort in putting tweaks during that time to really respect the players' time as well.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, that timing is really important because like our mid-season updates in the past had come a month or a month and a half into the season once players have been really invested in their build. And now we're going to be much more focused on rapid updates within a week or two after the season launch to make sure that if we are making those adjustments, it is at a point where hey, you're not complete with the season, you're not done yet, and you can adjust.
No, říkají v podstatě to, že budou nerfovat buildy, pokud budou nějaký prostě takový ty, jak byly na začátku 7. sezóny, který dávali miliardy nebo nekonečno damage hnedka ze začátku, tak to budou nerfovat hnedka v prvním nebo ve druhém týdnu, aby ty hráči potom nebrečeli v polovině season, že jim nerfli nějaký silný build. Jo?
We would probably act quickly on as a part of the next season.
Dobrý, ale už to omílej, že jo, za 10 minut tady, no.
Bloodwave using that as an example is very much an S tier build right now in this season.
S plus.
S plus for sure. I think that the goal is not to immediately take it to F or even immediately take it to C or anything like that. It's really keep it still an S, but like also make sure that it's still like at least lined up with like the other builds that might be up there in that.
Já si skoro myslím, že by se měli vykašlat na ty streamy a prostě vydávat videa. Aby jsme to mohli přeskočit.
For example, if the seasonal powers aren't performing in a way that feels really powerful and crunchy, we're going to be buffing those. So it's not only looking out for the S+, it's also looking for the things that missed the mark. So we're going to be buffing those also.
No, taky budou buffovat ty věci, které nemají dostatečnou sílu.
Players at the start of season 8 will see us be a lot more reactionary towards those first couple weeks in the early part of that season. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that with players because we've seen a lot of questions about mid-season updates. Is this a mid-season update when they see a patch or something like that? And so going forward, I know that's going to be the plan as we look at updating the game in the future.
And if you hide things early, I will Liam Neeson your ass.
Nevím, Lukáši, tuším někde v dubnu. Máš to napsaný ve hře, když ji zapneš. Tam je napsaný, že si sezóna končí někdy. Nebo to někdo napíše do chatu třeba.
State of game, especially with season 7, where we're at, and kind of how we're looking at that towards season 8. I think one of the biggest points of feedback we've heard related to season 7 is kind of the pace of the game. It's, you know, sometimes you blink and you're level 20 and you're like, holy crap, what happened? So I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Budou upravovat tempo hry,
sort of our perspective on season 7,
abys nelusknul a neměl 20 levelů.
Very fast.
Že tady je teďka tempo hry strašně rychlý.
Part of it is a lot of the really cool new seasonal powers. Part of it's the headhunts being super lucrative and awesome.
Něco přispívají ty nový síly, něco přispívají žoldáci, něco přispívá prostě nový event.
And what we've seen is, compared to Season 6, which had a lot of positive feedback as part of our revamped progression model, is that a lot of that has sort of gone down the drain in terms of how fast players are chewing through some of the content. So,
že prostě je to moc rychlý to levelení, no.
I apologize, this is terrible, but I just pulled it from the stat, our sort of stat page. It's not the greatest, but this is a picture of Season 6. You can see on the y-axis here, it was taking roughly people around 15 to 17 hours on average to get to max level. We felt like that was a pretty good journey, right? Part of
Sezona 6, na 60. level byla 15 až 17 hodin.
You start to sort of form a build and find a lot of different pieces early on when you're still forming your character, where customization is really fun, right? You're not necessarily locked into a build. So we felt like that was a pretty good clip.
Jako 300 Paragon taky jsem nedělal nikdy. Tím kašlu.
Faster or slower depending on sort of how much of a blaster you are.
Kdyby tam bylo co dělat v hře, tak s tím nemám problém, ale jako chodit pořád dokola Nightmare Dungeony nebo pity, abych jako optimalizoval ty XPčka, to mi přijde jako totální zhovadilost. V 7. sezóně na 60 se dostaneš za 9 hodin, což je skoro polovina. Ale tohle mě upřímně třeba jako vůbec nevadí, jo, jakože čas na 60. level, že je o polovinu kratší. Jakože potom spíš ty Paragony a tak, no ale... To bylo prostě zpomalovat trošičku, no. To levelení.
So it is going to be slower from 1 to 25, but one thing we've done to sort of compensate that is we've taken a look at the itemization. We don't like that rares and sort of magic items immediately disappear after the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I think you kind of get to that point like we were talking about. If you get to like level 20, you blink and you're level 20, and then at the same time you blink and you're like, blues and yellows, like.
V podstatě budou zpomalovat tu zkušenost toho hráče od toho 1. do 25. levelu, abyste si prostě takhle nezabili pár monster a nebyli na tom levelu, no.
sort of I start with nothing and become a god.
No jasně, jakoby, to je přesně ono, že oni jakoby nechápou to, že nám nevadí to, že jsme rychle na velkém levelu, ale to, že tam na tom levelu nemáme co dělat.
You know what? I'm going to jump actually into the legendaries really quick because it's really important, a really important part of this. The other thing that was contributing to this leveling sort of pace was that players are getting a legendary every 3 to 4 minutes, and that's from 1 to 60. That's not just in the end game.
Další problém s tempem je, že hráči dostávají moc rychle legendárky. Každý 3 až 4 minuty dostaneš per legendárku, tak to je možná na začátku, protože jinak dostáváš legendárku podle mě tak každých 30 vteřin v těch nových eventech. No, během levelování budou redukovat počet legendárek, magický itemy můžou mít 2 afixy, rare itemy můžou mít 3, legendárky jsou pořád jako nejlepší kvalita na maximálním levelu.
And what that means is, when you get a drop at level 35 from a Whisper Cache, right now, in Season 7, it feels terrible when you don't get a legendary item because you just know that it's just not even worth looking at, right? But now that rare items can have up to 3 affixes, that means that you might have a really good imprintable base. It means all the rares that drop across the game from 1 to 60 could actually be pretty great gear for you, especially with all of our crafting options.
No, říkají, že vlastně rare itemy teďka, jak budou mít 3 afixy, tak jsou potom vhodný na craftění. Že prostě potom na ně smešneš legendárku nebo aspekt a může to být jako dobrý item na to levelení a tak dále. Ale to stejně si nemyslím, že reálně bude hrát roli, protože v momentě, kdy se dostaneš přes ten 60. level, tak ty rare itemy jsou k ničemu, že?
And then I know some of the other items we've been talking about have been like a little bit of that torment progression. We've seen drastic differences between like season 6 to season 7, and it's something I know we're making tweaks to.
Yeah, so the other half of Diablo is obviously the max level endgame, right? And we've heard a ton of feedback that it just feels like a weekend game right now. You can just blast through all the torment tiers. There's nothing that's really satisfying about it. There's nothing to work towards just because you're just getting so much power so frequently and just really crushing this content. So what we've done here is, if we go to the slide, we've actually given. Actually, let me jump into some of the stats. I think it's really interesting.
To je hrozný, ale tohle. V podstatě. Oni dostali feedback, že ta hra je víkendovka, kdy jsi jako za víkend na maximálním levelu. A jejich odpověď na to je to, že oni zdvojnásobujou, jak dlouho ti bude trvat, než se dostaneš na Torment 4. Jo? Takže jako z 15 hodin, který od 60. levelu potřebuješ na Torment 4, tak oni udělají 30 hodin. Takže potřebuješ, jako podle jejich matiky je prostě správný řešení zdvojnásobit dobu levelení.
So what we're going to do is make some adjustments. So Torment 1 is now going to start at pit tier 10, which means we've effectively added 10 pit tiers to the pit, because now Torment 1 starts earlier. And then we've also increased
Torment 1 začíná na pit tieru 10. Torment a pit scaling se zvyšuje o 20%.
Every level of the pit is multiplicative on previous levels. So it's not just like, oh, whatever pit I was at, it's now 20% harder. It's actually like kind of stacking 20% every level. So the end result is that, a pit tier 100 is much harder than it was before. And that will,
každý pit level stakuje o 20% větší obtížnost, takže pit 100 je strašně složitější, než byl doteď. Takže oni ti v podstatě oni ti zdvojnásobujou čas, který strávíš na levelení, tím, že dávají extrémní obtížnost na to. Na ty pity. Torment 4 bude ekvivalent na 7 sezónu. Vydržte chvíli.
Pit tier 150 is going to be very difficult. So difficult that I don't believe any of you will reach it. I don't know, I'll do something silly on.
He says this
stream.
now.
I'll probably regret
that's signing up for doing something silly on stream.
And then like within the first week.
That's a challenge to all of you out there.
Yeah, you all can vote on the silly thing that I do. But conversely, I just want to cover this really quickly, though. Torment 4 isn't going to be insanely harder than it was before. It's going to be roughly around Pit Tier 76s on live right now, so Season 7. So think about the game that you're playing right now. Torment 4 is going to be about 11 Pit Tiers harder. So it's still achievable. It's just that upper end is also just going to be that much harder to sort of climb through.
Awesome. So we got a lot of changes coming for like tournament scaling, obviously some itemization changes. So the big thing being as you're leveling up, you're going to see a lot more opportunities to find items, especially with the changes to blue and yellow.
Leveling nebylo to jako hlavní zábavou, no. V podstatě jo, no.
At 60, the item power on legendaries is still going to be the best method and the best items to actually grab. So yeah, lots of big changes coming up. Great to actually walk through all of them. I know we have a ton more to talk about specifically around the new season. So thank you, Colin. We're gonna jump over to Derek, because I know we do want to talk about the new season and what players are actually going to be experiencing in this PTR. Again, just to redefine what PTR is for some people, because I got messages from people going like, well, PTRs are sometimes buggy, and I'm like, well, it's a PTR, so it is like a beta or an alpha, an early look into a game, so we expect that. There will be like known issues, and we'll actually have those known issues on our forums, so people can actually see them, you can report bugs. That actually
další tournamenty, jak double immortality to zredukujou. No, jako v podstatě jako zdvojnásobí, no, obtížnost těch základních týrů, no.
That helps tweak the start of the season for the better, essentially. But with Season 8, we will be having, of course, a PTR, and we'll be talking about it here.
Bude tady testovací server na 8. sezónu.
Season 7 kind of had this like this overarching theme with like big changes in that season. One was specifically around what was mostly focused around like the whispers, and of course with Season 8 we have another overarching theme that we're really going to be talking about, where we'll be kind of even seeing an old friend. So Derek, do you want to chat about it here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, as you mentioned, seasons are kind of like our opportunity to shine focus on an existing system and really amplify or celebrate or enhance it within that respective season. So we've seen that with Season 4 with the Helltide revamps and whatnot, as you mentioned. Season 7 was the emphasis on the Tree of Whispers and Bounties. So as Colin kind of mapped out the journey to the end game, we wanted to shine focus on a major end game feature, namely
endgameová aktivita.
And we have a lot of really cool bosses in the world of Sanctuary. But more specifically, the lair boss system, or as some of us, and we reference it to as the boss ladder. So Season 8, focus is on the lair boss system. We're going to be doing a whole mess of new things to it. So we're adding new bosses, new mechanics,
nový bossové, nový mechaniky do ledru,
and a revamped materials loop that I'm going to be covering throughout the
změněný získávání materiálů na bosse.
The new bosses and additions to the roster. So when we're talking about the lair bosses, these are like the biggest, baddest, bosses of Sanctuary. So we're looking at how do we add to the roster in a meaningful way, but also which bosses do we add that are impactful and versatile enough to carry the entire theme of a season. So with that in mind, we're just asking ourselves a question of which are the right bosses to bring. You mentioned an old friend. So we had to choose something that was versatile. We had to choose something that was big, bad. So that's where we go to Belial. Yes, Season 8, Belial's return. Belial's back in Sanctuary. He is climbing his way to the top of the lair boss ladder. He is the new, exalted pinnacle challenge within the ladder.
Nový největší záporák, jakoby nejtěžší boss.
He has some very unique reward-related tricks up his sleeve that I'll cover a little bit later. So for now, just know that Belial's back, and he's also just not joining the party alone. He's bringing a couple of friends from our Vessel of Hatred. So first up is our buddy Urvar. So Urvar's joining the roster of the lair boss ladder system. He's going to be filling out kind of like the lowest rung of the ladder. So he's going to be joining the party with the Varshans and the...
Bude takový jako slabší, něco jako Varshan.
So Urvar's back, and we're also bringing back another Vessel of Hatred character, the Harbinger of Hatred.
I'm so happy for this.
Yeah, no, this one...
I love this fight.
We're going to see a little bit more of this guy
ještě tady toho
a little bit, but
Vlka, tu slabší variantu Mephistas, jakoby.
With the likes of Duriel and Andariel. And one thing I just do want to stress is that
bude to něco jako
both
Duriel
these,
Andariel.
Vessel of Hatred bosses will dip into the shared loot pools of other bosses within their respective tier, but also have some additional bonuses that is specific to the Vessel of Hatred, like being a great source of tributes and runes. But Belial, for all intents and purposes, is available to everyone, and he is just the new pinnacle challenge of the boss ladder.
So you're saying even harder than Duriel and Andariel right now. He's going to be harder, more rewarding than even those.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
New
Belial,
top tier.
yeah, new top tier. Belial, Lord of Lies, he does not mess around.
And I'm really excited about this because I think this is going to pair really well with the sort of leveling journey in the tournament progression where we're making things a little bit more aspirational, a little bit more challenging. It's really like a return to the heart of the Diablo experience, right? Sort of leveling from nothing and taking on these huge big bads to claim their loot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's kind of like the inherent.
Ten boss vypadá jako z druhého aktu Diabla 3, Belial tuším, jo, to je on.
With like the initiate level floor, you take those on, you graduate to the next level, and then now you have kind of Belial just always there looming over you. That's kind of like the aspirational, yes, I get to go fight him now. But for those who know about our buddy Belial, Lord of Lies, you know that he kind of appears in different forms. So this is what we're kind of referencing as like his supreme form that appears at the top of the lair boss ladder. But
já si chat budu muset ale asi zavolat.
Smaller, more agile, compact form. I like to affectionately refer to him as Baby Belial, but this is Belial in his more compact form. And throughout the course of the season, or I guess just the lair boss mechanics, he's going to be popping up all over the place. But I'm really excited about this version of Belial's new role in the lair boss ladder system, in the sense that defeating and looting any of the lair bosses has a small % chance to initiate a surprise ambush from Belial himself. And this is really cool because this is kind of like a
Když budeš sbírat materiály z Leather bossů, tak tě může napadnout ten Belial.
And I get this special ambush triggered.
Jakoby napadne, podobně jak Duriel. A když ho zabiješ, tak dostaneš dvojitý loot z toho bose, který ho šel. Když půjdeš třeba na Andarielku, spawne se tam tadyhle ta varianta Beliala, ta menší, tak se ti zdvojnásobí loot. A předpokládám, že z něj budeš mít nějaký zase materiál, ze kterého potom budeš na toho velkého Beliala.
This version of Belial has a very special connection to his larger supreme form in the lair boss ladder that I'll touch upon a little bit later. A lot of teasing that I'm kind of just setting up. There's a lot to go over.
We're gonna love everybody.
To je cool. Každopádně, chat, já si musím zavolat. Já tady mám takovou trošku krizi, domácí technický problém. A potřebuju to vyřešit, dokud není úplně pozdě. Potřebuji si zavolat domácí, takže chvilku pauza a pak se na to dokoukáme, OK? Já to tady jenom napíšu. Tak. Hned jsem tu, OK? Jo, sorry chat, je to problém, něco tady s bitem se pojebalo a musím to řešit, ale nechám to puštěný teda aspoň, OK? Já to nechám puštěný, pak to dokoukáme a tak.
Here, this is a lie. Yeah. Yeah. So that was that. That was the Blau ambushes. But I also want to talk about some additional major sweeping updates that's coming in with just the system as a whole. And I want to talk about the summoning materials. As we know, the way that the system currently functions is, you do activities, you get summoning items, you go visit the boss, and you plop them in, you summon the boss, and then that's kind of just a flow. So when we're looking at the lair boss system, we don't just look about ways that we can add to it. We also look about opportunities to resolve or reduce some frictions, or just areas for improvement that we can have with it. Since it's a very mature system, we get a lot of feedback that we diligently ingest and talk about and whatnot on the team. So when it came to the summoning materials, we identified a couple of key points of, I guess, friction that players are currently having with it. One is, since you have to ante up your summoning materials just to summon the boss, it's kind of a feels bad moment when you realize that you just wasted, X number of materials to find out that you can't defeat Duriel. Like, okay, that's wasted materials, back to the loop, maybe I'll fight him another week or two, depending how fast you are. And it's just generally not a great feeling for myself or for players and whatnot.
Yeah, I definitely have run into this where it's like, I'm only going to fight the boss when I can guaranteed win against it. Right. So you never actually.
And how do you know that too? Until trial and error.
Like you never really have that like actual fight.
Říkáš, že chci nějak předejít tomu, že si nafarmíš materiály a pak to třeba nezvládneš porazit. Ty bose.
I've had times where I'm like, I don't know if my build's quite ready, so I'll try to fight a boss, and then I'm like, oh, this is really tough. Like I die a couple times, and I'm like, do I really want to keep like retrying it? Because like, well, I've already invested. I'm kind of committed. So with this new way, I don't need to invest those right up front. I can just go and fight them right away and see how strong I am without risking the materials.
Yeah. So we're going to cover like the specificities of the new system and how it all works in a little bit. But the other kind of pain point that we identified with the current system is also just in regards to like the party play. I think my little earpiece is coming out of my ear. There you go. Now
it's a common theme on this.
Yeah.
The earpiece just pops out all the time.
We do it live here. So the other element is like just the party play, right? Yeah. And as much as we want to kind of like entrust in our fellow man and whatnot and engage in the boss rotations and whatnot, we have seen, some areas of friction where certain players don't engage in the boss rotations and they don't submit their materials. Like no one watching the stream would ever be guilty of this, but that does happen. It's shocking, but it does happen.
Belial is on the other side of the computer. It's like, I'll definitely.
Říkáš, že chci nějak pořešit to střídání materiálů v partě, aby prostě se lidi jenom nevezli a tak.
Kind of area of friction that we experience with the current summoning materials. So I think that's kind of enough of a preface just to set the tone for where the system is going now that we're introducing in Season 8. So
what are we doing?
I don't know. Let's find out. All right,
okay, systém klíčů.
So summoning materials are effectively being repurposed in their roles as a new item called lair keys.
Takže materiály budou nově klíče. Aha, všichni bossové jsou zdarma na summonění, ale lair klíče dávají přístup k jejich jakoby lootu, který bude oddělený.
But what lair keys now do is they grant access to the defeated boss's hoard or their treasure chest that they drop. So now I'll just walk you through kind of the new flow. Imagine this with me. So you enter Duriel's lair. You walk up to his altar and you just click the altar to summon him. Again, no cost to you. You fight Duriel, you defeat him, out
Když na Duriela vyvoláš ho zadarmo, platíš ho,
which is now the lair key, you use that to open his hoard.
Když máš klíč, tak otevřeš jeho truhlu nebo chápeš a dostaneš loot.
So you have to pay in order to get the loot, and the only loot the loot comes from the person who pays.
Yeah, that's a very important distinction. Is that now every member in the party needs to have the appropriate type and quantity of the lair keys to access.
A každý člen musí mít klíč, aby dostal loot. Takže už se nemůžeš nechat tahat.
9999, Duriel mats, you can split them in half and give them to your buddies to open the chest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ale pořád můžeš jako sdílet klíče s ostatníma.
You'll get a Belial ambush and you can get double loot.
Yeah, there you go. So a lot of new avenues and ways to kind of experience the system. So we also have the Stygian stones. So Stygian stones in Season 8 is living a new life now in the sense that we wanted to ensure that every boss in the first rung of the ladder, our initiate lair bosses, the Varshans, Grigors, Beastmen,
Stygian Stony se konvertují do Duriel, Andariel, Harbinger, Harbinger of Hatred klíčů.
So in addition to, you can take a screenshot of this chart here. I won't try and walk through the entire thing, but now Stygian Stones is a drop that can drop from any of the initiate lair boss tier here. And you can crush them into your lair key of choice for the second rung of the lair bosses. So let's say I fight Grigor.
Takže ze základních bossů padají Stygian Stony a ty si je převedeš na klíče do jakýhokoliv bosse chceš.
And again, just giving a little bit more flexibility in how players actually engage and progress through the lair boss ladder. Again, as we know, all roads lead to Belial, Lord of Lies, the top of the pinnacle of the ladder at the end. Ooh, there's a lot. All right, final thing here is the item bloat reduction. So again, with this new system, we're consolidating all the lair keys to one lair key type per
Klíče se
boss.
stakují do 99.
Two different materials, and so I have enough material. I have 2 of these, 5 of these. It's just one material per boss. We're increasing the item stacking of these to 99, again, to cut down on some of that bloat. And one of my personal favorites here is that we're also normalizing the counts of required lair keys per boss rank. So all the initiate tiered bosses, they require the same quantity of their respective keys. So too the degraders and whatnot. So again, it's just cutting down on the total mental math and memory that is kind of affecting the, I guess, like on-ramping enjoyment of the current system.
Yeah, and Andariel only needs 1 material, for example, as part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see in this chart here, you have Pincushion Doll, Shard of Agony, or the Stygian Stone is kind of the wild card that you can crush to any one of them. So let's say if Andariel needed 4 Pincushion Dolls, you have 3 of them, but you have 1 Stygian Stone, you can crush that into a Pincushion Doll and go get Andariel's Horde. So, all right, that was a pretty big overview and a lot of talking in charts, but I want to take the time to throw it over to Ruben and behind the scenes here and kind of just get into just what this all looks like as part of just the in-game flow.
Hello, Derek. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. Yeah, let me open up the menu for you.
All right, cool. So in this walkthrough, I'm just going to show you kind of, or we're going to show you rather, the new flow to access the lair bosses with a little bit of a sneak peek of the Harbinger of Hatred. So one thing I want to just call out real quick is kind of some of the quality of life updates that we've taken to just the map presentation and the boss dungeon tooltips themselves. And I'll kind of just go through these in kind of an itemized order. So first, all of the boss dungeon map icons have been given a little bit of a beautification treatment. So they're a little bit more bold, red, and easier to identify against the sea of other icons on the map. But now I want to talk about the tooltip, and I'll just start from the top and go make my way down. So the first quality of life update that we added was just simply printing the name of the boss that resides within the dungeon. One of the kind of ambiguities that we had with the previous version of this system was not knowing specifically which boss lives in which dungeon. Like, oh, who does live in the Gaping Crevice, or who lives in the Malignant Tunnels. So now you can see here that the Harbinger of Hatred lives in the Harbinger's Den. This is probably not the best example, because who else would live in the Harbinger's Den? He technically does live in every single one of them.
You don't know where he's at.
But yeah, so you can see here now, we print the name of the lair boss that lives in the dungeon for a little bit easier find. Inside of the main body description, we also just give a little bit more guidance and information on what the value of defeating this boss is, and directing players to the fact that they are a source of ancestral and mythic unique items. The last 2 updates here are some of my favorites of this, is that we also display now the required items that you need to access the lair boss's horde. If you recall the previous iteration, that was not apparent to you, so you would kind of like waste the time traveling to the boss just to find out that, oh, I have 3 or 4 Abhorrence Hearts, so I can't fight the boss yet. So we wanted to, again, just smoothen out the access and onboarding to the feature. And I think my absolute favorite update of all this is, you see at the bottom, we now have the ability to travel directly into the dungeon directly from the map. So again, no more teleporting to the nearest waypoint. We just pop directly in and just get into it. And we have Ruben loading into here, and I think this is a great time to just outline. I've talked about the new bosses. I've talked about new mechanics. but we have a collection of really great existing lair bosses. And one thing that we wanted to take as an opportunity within the season was to also enhance every other lair boss that exists within the system. So every lair boss is getting a bit of a difficulty spike and new mechanics to, again, freshen up the fights that we've been knowing and love. So if you fought the Varshans or the Duriels or even the Liliths over and over and over again, all this is in the PTR, so definitely worth checking them out again to see what's changed and how much different their experience is.
Yeah, Duriel has some messed up surprises.
Yeah,
Duriel eats you.
Why did you spoil it? It's definitely worth checking out the mechanics. But again, so this is the Harbinger of Hatred. And just as a reminder, one thing that we do when we add a boss to the lair boss system is we don't just take the carbon copy campaign version of it. We also take the opportunity to inject some really crazy mechanics. So I don't necessarily want to kind of spoil the surprises of the Harbinger of Hatred's mechanics here, but he does get pretty wild. This is a spectacle and a half of a fight, cool. And I'm really excited to have players check it out. So. Yeah, and I think this is about all we might want to show of this guy.
Yeah, we probably won't go into it. We don't want to spoil all the mechanics and everything. Even though we're kind of also spoiling a little bit of like a rogue build.
Keen-eyed amongst you might have noticed some interesting things on Rogue, which I'll get to in a bit.
Yes. It's spoil or it's teasing to make
teasing. That's
teasing everyone along here. But yeah, so now that was a sneak peek at the Harbinger of Hatred. We just talked about, again, in case you missed it, all lair bosses are getting a boost in both their performance and just the mechanics that they have.
Yep.
But let's, we fast forwarded past, the Harbinger of Hatred's fight. So let's imagine a world that, we fought through the whole thing, we killed him, and let's show off now what to expect from the Horde loot flow. So we have some footage here with this very shiny chest.
Very shiny chest.
So we have 4 abhorrence hearts, and now we can open up the chest. Again, each one of us needs to have it. And I mentioned that Belial has a chance to surprise ambush you after opening any horde. And here you go. Look at this. So this is meant to be a relatively rare occurrence. But this is the magic of pre-recorded footage. We can make the impossible happen. And in this case, again, painting the full picture of the scenario, you defeated the Harbinger of Hatred, you got the Horde, you opened it, you got Baby Belial, you killed him, and now you get another proc of, double the loot, double the fun.
Yeah, double the loot of what you just essentially got. Which
with the one-time payment of the lair keys that you deposited. So, it really is, kind of a 2-for-1 sale that Belial has for you.
And if you noticed, you might have seen, we did keep a bonus for party play. So while you do have to pay to get the chest and open up the Horde, we kept a bonus chance for loot. So we love that people enjoy fighting the bosses as parties, and we know that that's a fun social experience in Diablo. So what we've done is the Hordes themselves will have bonus chances for loot when you are in a party. And that does scale with party members.
Yep, no, absolutely. So a lot of loot everywhere to give. And on the topic, at the very top, I teased that Belial had a very special kind of role in the reward structure, different from every other boss. So defeating the ambush version of Belial is not just lucrative in the sense that it's a double payout. He is also the sole source of the lair keys that you need to access and easier to identify against the other icons on the map. But now I want to talk about the tooltip, and I'll just start from the top and make my way down. So the first quality of life update that we added was just simply printing the name of the boss that resides within the dungeon. One of the kind of ambiguities that we had with the previous version of this system was not knowing specifically which boss lives in which dungeon. Like, who does live in the Gaping Crevice, or who lives in the Malignant.
Že každý boss bude ukazovat, jaký tam, nebo každý dungeon ukazuje, jako, jaký tam je ten boss.
This is probably not the best example, because who else would live in the Harbinger's Den? He technically does live in every single one of them.
You don't know where he's at.
But so you can see here now, we print the name of the lair boss that lives in the dungeon for a little bit easier find. Inside of the main body description, we also just give a little bit more guidance and information on,
Taky tam budou informace teda, co tam dropuje, jaký itemy, jaký jsou požadovaný itemy.
The last 2 updates here are some of my favorites of this, is that we also display now the required items that you need to access the lair boss's horde. If you recall the previous
Takže to jsou jakoby ty klíče, které potřebuješ na to, abys dostal ten loot z toho bosse.
Like waste the time traveling to the boss just to find out that, oh, I have 3 or 4 abhorrence hearts, so I can't fight the boss yet. So we wanted to, again, just smoothen out the access and onboarding to the feature. And I think my absolute favorite update of all this is you see at the bottom, we now have the ability to travel directly into the dungeon directly from the map. So,
OK, a můžeme se tam nově přímo teleportovat do toho dungeonu. Do bossovi.
Pop directly in and just get into it.
To je dobrý docela.
And yeah, we have Ruben loading into here, and I think this is a great time to just outline. I've talked about the new bosses. I've talked about new mechanics. But we have a collection of really great existing lair bosses. And one thing that we wanted to take as an opportunity within the season was to also enhance every other lair boss that exists within the system. So every lair boss is getting a bit of
každý boss už i existující ve hře dostává nový mechaniky, vylepšený ten svůj lair.
So if you fought, the Varshans or the Duriels or even the Liliths, over and over and over again, all this is in the PTR, so definitely worth checking them out again to see what's changed and how much different their experience is.
Yeah, Duriel.
OK, takže všichni bossové budou mít nový mechaniky a tak dále. A Duriel tě může zežrat.
But again, so this is the Harbinger of Hatred. And just as a reminder, one thing that we do when we add a boss to the lair boss system is we don't just take the carbon copy, campaign version of it. We also take the opportunity to inject some really crazy mechanics.
Okay, i tady vzali nový mechaniky, nejenom ty, co jsou v kampani.
The surprises of the Harbinger of Hatred's mechanics here, but he does get pretty wild. This is a spectacle and a half of a fight, cool. And I'm really excited to have players check it out. So. Yeah, and I think this is about all we might want to show of this guy.
Yeah, we probably won't go into it. We don't want to spoil all the mechanics and everything. Even though we're kind of also spoiling a little bit of like a rogue build.
Keen-eyed amongst you might have noticed some interesting things on rogue, which I'll get to in a bit.
Yes. It's spoil or it's teasing to make teasing everyone along here. But yeah, so now that was a sneak peek at the Harbinger of Hatred. We just talked about, again, in case you missed it, all lair bosses are getting a boost in both their performance and just the mechanics that they have.
Yep.
But let's, we fast forwarded past, the Harbinger of Hatred's fight. So let's imagine a world that, we fought through the whole thing, we killed him, and let's show off now what to expect from the Horde loot flow. So we have some footage here with this very shiny chest.
Very shiny chest.
So we have 4 abhorrence hearts, and now we can open up the chest.
Zabili jsme ho, použili jsme srdce na otevření truhly. Teď jsme teda dostali loot. Máme šanci, že nás napadne ten Belial.
But this is the magic of pre-recorded footage. We can make the impossible happen.
A když ho zabijeme, tak dostaneme znova ten loot.
You defeated the Harbinger of Hatred, you got the Horde, you opened it, you got Baby Belial, you killed him, and now you get another proc of, double the loot, double the fun.
Yeah, double the loot of what you just essentially got. Which
with the one-time payment of the lair keys that you deposited. So, it really is, kind of a 2-for-1 sale that Belial has for you.
And if you noticed, you might have seen, we did keep a bonus for party play.
Ako som vás práve teda už by malo oznámiť, kedy bude končiť Early Access.
Open up the Horde. We kept a bonus chance for loot. So we love that people enjoy fighting the bosses as parties, and we know that
bossové jsou docela fajn.
In Diablo. So what we've done is the hordes themselves will have bonus chances for loot when you are in a party, and that does scale with party.
Jo, takže když jsi v partě, tak bossové mají bonusovou šanci na loot další, jakoby.
On the topic at the very top, I teased that Belial had a very special kind of role in the reward structure, different from every other boss. So defeating the ambush version of Belial is not just lucrative in the sense that it's a double payout. He is also the sole source of the lair keys that you need to access his supreme form at the top of the ladder.
Z toho malého Beliala padají klíče na toho velkou formu toho Beliala.
Belial's very green chest here. So you can see here, it doesn't open up right away. I have some options. So the really cool thing about the Supreme Belial's Horde is that you can set it to mimic the reward drops
si můžeš
of any other existing
mimikovat
lair boss.
odměny
let's say if you
jiných
are
bossů
trying
z
to
toho
do guerrilla
Beliala.
runs to get the special stuff that he has, and you can set your Belial to drop the Duriel loot, and he will do so at an enhanced rate. So it's even better than if you just went to go fight Duriel.
A bude to ještě lepší, než kdybys to dropnul z Duriela nebo Andariel. Že máš jako větší šanci třeba na mytiky a tak.
This version of Belial just gives you a much better chance of doing that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just that in terms of like his value, he also guarantees one ancestral unique drop per kill. And he's also a really great
garantuje jeden
source of
ancestral
the
unique drop.
compasses. So, if you want to, empower
A
kompasy
kompasy.
and whatnot, it's never a waste of time to go visit
Hord kompas.
the Belial Supreme at the top of the ladder here.
Yeah, and this is in Torment 2, and it all scales with Torment. So
Exactly,
the higher
yeah.
the Torment, the
Yeah,
more
we're
loot you'll get.
what we're
A
seeing
scaluje
is
to s tormentama.
Torment 2, so
Že
obviously
čím
the
větší
Torment
torment,
2,
tím
you
lepší
get
odměny.
more loot out of it because it's a much more difficult challenge at Torment
is much
for
more.
sure.
Yeah, it scales with the torment tiers, and also if we were in a party in this example here, we'd get even more chances of great stuff out of it as well.
That's exactly right.
All right, cool. Well, that is the lair key and the lair boss. I'm just have a lot of things to cover here.
Yeah, I know we want to talk a little bit about kind of it's funny because people saw it as Ruben was on the map because they probably saw a term like with apparitions and everything.
Right, yeah, there's a lot of teasing in this.
I know, a lot of teasing. This is what
not
happens when
planned.
you use a live build and everything's fine.
Yeah, it's exciting. But one thing before we hop into the next thing, I do want to reestablish so that everything that we just talked about as far as what we're introducing to the lair boss system and all the mechanics, new bosses and whatnot, that is permanent. That is just how the system works now. So everything is getting introduced in Season 8, but it's not leaving beyond Season 8. It is just
Všechno
there.
zůstává i po konci sezóny a je to i ve
That's just how
standardu.
the system works. What the next thing
Všechny změny.
is all the seasonal specific stuff.
Ale teďka budou sezónní specifické věci.
Seen some apparition incursion things pop up. So let's get into the first kind of a seasonal related content here. Oh, the top says lair boss. Okay. Anyways, we do it live. Apparition incursions. Apparition Incursions is a new open world seasonal event to
Nový
empower
event,
your
open
level journeys
worldový.
and also kind of just spread the narrative and dramas of Belial is back on Sanctuary and he's spreading his own sense of
Závod proti
twisted
Belialovi,
realities
10 nových
across
bossů,
the
který
land.
se náhodně
He's
můžou
always
asi
in this
objevit v
effort
tom
to
světě a
plunge,
napadnou tě.
the world of Sanctuary into his realm of lies.
To vypadá.
And he's doing it through this fast-paced boss rush style event that kind of takes the spirit of the open world social boss play of the Blood Maiden and making a really cool kind of just really fast-paced.
Něco jako Blood Maiden
bam,
prostě v
bam, bam,
Helltidech.
boss rush style event. So I think we have some footage here just to put some visuals to it. So
Okay.
this is an area of the world that Belial's apparitions are kind of overtaking. And throughout the course, players are going to be defeating these apparitions to draw out up to 2 of his apparition bosses. This is pulled from a total of 10 potential apparition bosses. So each
Takže vždycky spawne se vlna monster a potom je porazíš a spawne se tato apparition, což jsou nějaký random vždycky 2 bossové z 10 možných. Kdy teda, když je porazíš, tak potom teda bojuješ proti tomu Belialovi.
And the idea for this is that they're up pretty much 24/7, so we want to just encourage that, hop on the boss train, ride it to the end, find the next one, and just, go to your heart's content. And, celebration of bosses this season, really.
Absolutely. And what do you get for killing those bosses?
Ooh, you're going to get some cool stuff, Colin. Let's go to the next slide. That kind of leads us into the collectible boss powers.
Budeš sbírat 24 sil bossů, jak kdyby, nějakých schopností. Těch bossů, který jakoby se objevují, ty apparitions. Každá síla má 2 strany, jednu hlavní a nějaký 3 modifiery.
In Season 8, players will be acquiring the ability to steal and mimic the powers of up to 24 targeted bosses across Sanctuary. So we have 24 collectible powers that are gathered from the first time kill of targeted bosses across the full content from level 1 till the very top. So you asked about, what do the apparition bosses give you? They're, aside from the loot and all that stuff, they're also your first source of your first 10 boss powers that make up the magic tiers. You can kind of see in this little chart here.
Yep.
Graduating from the apparition bosses, you now go into the world bosses. So each one of our 3 world bosses have a power associated with them.
OK, takže prvních 10 bossů z těch eventů má svoji sílu, world bossové mají svoji sílu.
It's like a ladder in the boss battle.
It's definitely celebrating the progression journey of bosses from, the moment
Ladder bossové mají svoje síly. To chápu správně.
Belial being kind of like the star of the season, he's special, he gets 2 powers because that's just how he rolls.
Belial má 2 síly, takže prostě všichni bossové ve hře v podstatě mají nějakou svoji vlastní sílu, kterou z nich můžeš získat.
So little ambiguity of like, how do I get the Wandering Death's power? Well, go fight and kill him. It's just that nice little structured journey that kind of is a nice little stamp collection just to reward each kind of a tier of progression that you make across your leveling and endgame journeys. But that's not just the coolest part of it, in my opinion, here is that it's also just how the powers work this season. So you can see that we have 4 slots, the top slot and 3 little kind of like supporting slots. So the really cool thing is that each one of these powers have 2 sides to them that activate depending on which power slot you put them in. So you can have up to 1 main.
Můžeš mít jednu hlavní sílu, to je to očičko největší asi, a 3 modifiery, který upravují tu hlavní sílu. To je hustý. Je vždycky aktivní jenom podle toho, v jakém je slotu. Jo? Vždycky třeba ta síla, ten vršek, to main, je vždycky ten, když je seketnutý tady, a modifier, když je seketnutý v těch 3, a vždycky ty 3 upravují tu jednu hlavní. Takže prostě navazuješ ty boss síly na sebe, což je super.
But that's how that respective area of the power system works. The modifier slots, though, are cool and powerful in their own right, though. So let's say I don't necessarily need the Wandering Death's, main power for whatever utility purposes. I can still get value out of the fact that I own it by slotting it into the modifier slots, which activates kind of like the side B of it, which is more of a supporting thing. So in this case, it's your main power. Now it empowers your main power to instantly execute non-boss enemies.
Ale je to super, jak se to navazuje na sebe ty síly, to většinou nebývá.
So it's not just 24 ways to kind of express your sense of power this season. It's 48 because each of these powers have kind of like 2 sides to them.
Yeah, it's really like build your own boss power.
Essentially, yeah, it's a lot of fun just kind of like mix match slot around.
Bude to jako zajímavý, můžeš jako zkombinovat různý síly do sebe a fakt si udělat nějakou brutální zajímavou boss sílu, která tě podporuje. To je fajn. Se mi líbí docela.
And ideally, what are the favorite combinations based off of the circumstance that you're going into?
Definitely.
Yeah,
go ahead, Charles.
One thing that I'm really excited about the system is in previous seasonal power systems, we sometimes found as you got really high, Paragon levels, your build is like super powerful. The relative impact of some of the seasonal powers was a little lower. They didn't really scale with you as well as we really wanted to. We've done an update in this season where these boss powers are going to scale with your Paragon level as you're leveling up. And so they actually are going to get more powerful as you get more powerful. Right. So the exact number, as soon as you unlock
ty síly budou scalovat s tvým Paragon levelem, takže čím jsi silnější, čím máš větší level, tím jsou lepší ty boss síly. Oproti minulým sezónám, to je hodně dobrý.
Yeah, it's really good. And I like the fact that the powers don't kind of just live on their own little island. Like they get ingrained into the other systems that we're engaging with. So that's a high level of the boss powers for season 8.
To je cool, no.
And I want to toss it back to Ruben for just kind of a little bit of a live showcase of them.
Hey Derek, thanks for all that. That was
nějaký
great.
ukázky budou?
Yeah, I'm excited. What do you got for us?
Well, I get the fun job of showcasing all these powers today, but I must confess I got my smoothie, so I'm a little jacked up today. So I'll try not to
happy you got your smoothie.
Yeah.
So happy for you.
I'll try not to talk too fast.
I'm thrilled.
Let's go ahead and open up our inventory here, and you'll notice on the left side a familiar tab is our seasonal tab, which is boss powers. So from this tab is where you'll be kind of interacting with your powers throughout the season. Like Derek mentioned, you can drag and drop them, equip them on the fly. There's no penalty. I think the
může kdykoliv prostě proměňovat různě.
You can also upgrade them by hovering over them. There's a
můžeš upgradeovat.
On PC it's F, so you go ahead and push that to upgrade them. And yeah, so the top slot is your main slot, like Derek mentioned. This is where your main powers go, and all the bottom ones are your modifier slots. So right here, Derek's favorite was the Wandering Death's chest beam. So as a modifier, right, you can execute enemies, but as soon as you drag it over here, boom, now it's a channeled ability. And you'll notice right away, It's a
wow.
prominent beam.
To vypadá zajímavě.
It works well with channeled abilities. It only works with channeled abilities, actually. And
Když channeluješ, tak se kolem toho dělá tenhle ten laser. Zajímavý.
Yeah, and as you can kind of tell, we're not necessarily going for subtlety in terms of the expression of these powers this season.
I'm dying. Someone in chat's like, Goku? Oh my god.
I also want to call it real quick. Just one thing I absolutely love is just the animations of the UI itself, and you slot these little like eyeball powers into the little eye sockets, and it blinks, and yeah, it's just kind of just fun across the board, just engaging with this.
And pops.
Yeah. So what do we got next?
The next one I want to showcase is Lilith's Wind of Hate, just because probably most of us have dived to this before, her spike ability from the ground. And it works on almost every skill. So you can see as soon as I dash here, I get the spikes.
Nice.
With Barrage, you get the spikes. So you can slot it in almost every build and have fun with it. Even Dance of Knives, really cool.
Každý skill může třeba tohle aktivovat a máš jakoby Lilith sílu.
Another fun one, there's a transformative ability is
Transformativní.
So it completely changes your evade skill and you
Mění tvůj evade.
You deal damage when you go into the ground and when you exit, but the real cool thing is you become immune while underground and you can control the direction.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Se zavrtáš do země jak Duriel a můžeš se pohybovat a seš imunní. A dáváš damage ještě.
Especially adding 3 new bosses with all kinds of crazy effects. You can now dodge them a little bit easier, which is great.
Tohle je super, no. Pro postavy, které mají problém s přežíváním.
Just right there, I want to just chime in to say that we showed off a power that procs off of the evade. We showed one that procs off channeling and one that procs off any skills. Like one of the goals going into the design of these powers was to just remove any ambiguity about how do I actually proc it. We wanted to make it as utility focused and straightforward as possible so that players can really easily digest and how they work it into their builds.
Yeah, that's a great point. Urvar's bombs is probably my personal favorite, as I like making builds and interesting builds. This definitely supports ultimate builds, and as you can see on the screen here, it lowers your cooldown by 5 seconds, which is great, and gives you a nice damage component to kind of top off on it. So we're playing Rogue, and Death Trap is an ultimate ability, so as soon as I pop it, you'll see Urvar's bombs kind of shoot out, and you get that lower cooldown effect as well, so it's great.
Cool.
And you get 2 death traps. I wonder how he's doing that.
That's on me. That's on me, guys. Yeah. All the teasing on the stream. And finally, before they play the walk-off music, I think I could showcase, let's do Grigor's Lightning Square. So if you notice, Lilith's skill had like a slight cooldown. This one scales with your build really well. So the more you can cast core skills, the more you get these iconic kind of lightning strike panels shoot out from your character. So you can imagine, you can just go full thunder.
OK, to je taky hodně hustý. Tohle scaluje s tvým core skillem, že čím častěji castíš core skill, tím častěji budeš dělat ty blesky. Že třeba jako pro některý ty lightning druidy a tak to bude hodně hustý. Síly je docela zajímavý. Spousta nových abilit, vypadá to, že i dávají hodně damage, protože scalujou s tvým levelem i s Paragonem. Takže to jako není špatný. Ty síly.
Yeah, all the season 8 stuff that will be available in PTR for players to actually jump into. We're still going to be talking about a few more things as we get closer to season 8 with the launch of the actual season itself. So, Derek, thank you so much for walking us through everything. And of course, with a new season and a new PTR, we have a lot of changes that are coming to classes, specifically like the Rogue, which we saw someone doing those. Yeah,
we can just skip.
Yeah,
we'll just skip it.
There's other classes to talk about.
Yeah, so Charles over here is actually going to go through all the class changes that players will be able to experience and test out.
Tak, ještě tam budou nějaký klasové změny.
There's tons of new bosses to fight, so how are you going to fight them, right? So let's talk about some class updates that are coming. First, I want to talk about some updates that are going to affect all classes in some way. These are kind of a bit more generic updates. So talking about ultimate scaling, this is something that we introduced in Season 7, the current live season, where as you get to rank 5 of the ultimate skills, some of them had mechanics that allowed you to crank up their damage by building different stats, right? So if you got more damage while fortified, then your blood wave is going to do more damage, for instance. We think that's really cool. It enabled a lot of very powerful builds, and so we're looking at ensuring that those don't like really eclipse every other option in the game. We still love that those are powerful builds. We love that you're playing them. We don't want them to be the only option. And so with that in mind, we're looking at putting a cap on that scaling.
Budou limitovat scalování ultimátek.
Bonus damage, which is still a lot. You're still doing, like triple damage, but we just want to make sure it doesn't get completely out of control with all the new stats and some of the scaling coming in from some of the seasonal powers that could potentially lead those to be, crowding out other options of gameplay. Additionally, we're looking at crowd control. This is something I talked about on our last campfire chat about how we're really looking at the moment-to-moment combat of our game. Like what are you doing like 1 second to the next? And one thing that came up a lot was sometimes enemies just randomly get crowd controlled. They randomly are frozen or stunned, and a lot of this comes from some of the what we call incidental crowd control, as in lucky hit crowd control effects, or anything that involves not like, oh, I pressed a button, now they're stunned, right? And we noticed like, hey, we got a lot of these effects across the game in many different places. And so we looked at really toning those down, specifically in the generic spaces. I know Fist of Fate is one of a very popular unique item right now for many reasons.
Budou upravovat, aby tak jakoby náhodně různě nedával crowd control na monstra, třeba přes Fist of Fate a tak dále. Aby náhodně nestunoval monstra, nezmražoval a tak dále.
Identity of Fist of Fate is still there as well. So it still has, wide ranges on things. It still does random damage and a lot of lucky hit chance as well.
Yeah, and this change really puts the value of Frost Nova and Ground Stomp. It sort of makes those more valuable and satisfying.
Right. Yeah. So if you really want to get those kind of crowd control effects, it's going to be a build choice. You're going to have to consciously do it, and you're going to like know when it's happening. It's not just, oh, they randomly got stunned, and if they didn't get stunned, maybe you got hit, and that never felt good when it was just kind of purely random.
Yeah.
Additionally, this is something that the keen-eyed among you might have spied when we were looking at some earlier stuff. We've done a bit of a naming pass on some of the damage over time effects.
Trošku přejmenovali nějaký efekty. Damage over time efekty přejmenovali.
Where we have things like physical damage, and when it's physical damage over time, we call it bleeding. And when it's poison, we call it poisoning.
Jasný. Takže Shadow bude jako corrupting damage, lightning, shocking damage, cold, frostbite, jako v případě, že to bude damage over time effect.
Affected enemies, which was an absolute mouthful. So we've got new common terms. Shadow damage over time will be called corrupting damage. Lightning damage over time is shocking damage. And cold damage over time, which we saw with the Wandering Death chest beam, is called frostbite damage. So that's just a terminology thing. It still relates to those base damage types, same as always. It's just a terminology update.
Jasný. Změna prostě terminologie.
All right, so let's get on to some of the actual class updates, starting, we'll just go alphabetically with the Barbarian.
Díky, Rudy.
Right, so our focus on Barbarian this season is about primarily about Barbarian's core fantasy of being physical and hitting enemies with a big weapon, right? In the past couple seasons, a lot of the meta builds around Barbarian have focused around things like Earthquakes or Dust Devils, which are really cool and fun, but I think we got some feedback that, hey, I don't really feel like I'm hitting enemies with my big weapon. I'm just making a tornado that hits them, which is not maybe fulfilling the fantasy that you want out of a Barbarian.
Your core skill isn't the cool thing. It's the thing that the core skill spawns.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it's cool that those exist, but we want to make sure we're also catering to that heavy hitter kind of fantasy. And so a lot of the updates this season are focused around that. Specifically updates to Double Swing core skill and the Twin Strikes unique to make that a bit more impactful to actually be hitting. Whirlwind as well. That's getting a buff and a rework with
Jasně, takže prostě barbaři spely budou takový víc evokující tu sílu. Prostě to budou nějakým způsobem předělávat, aby ten core skill sám o sobě dával to největší damage a ne ty efekty, které spawnou potom následně ty různý aspekty. Tady ty rukavice třeba ti každých 12 vteřin detonujou všechny pulzy toho Mighty Throw instantně a dají o 600% multiplikativně zvýšený fire damage.
So if you've got cooldown reduction on your gear or on the Bane of Ajuden, for instance, that's not going to actually reduce the cooldown, it's going to be a multiplicative scaler for these skills. And so that now you've got a new problem to solve, right? You can't cast these skills quite as often, but when you do, they're going to hit super hard. And so we've got a video clip of it just deleting a screen.
Ještě k tomu mění tady jeden aspekt, který místo cooldownu vám bude dávat damage. OK, to vypadá docela zajímavé.
But of course, because it doesn't benefit from cooldown reduction, that cooldown is going to be pretty much locked at that 12-second mark. And so you're going to have to find some other way to kind of fill the gap in there. And you've got a new challenge for your build to overcome.
I'm hoping to see Belial get decked by this.
I think it is possible that you're gonna melt some bosses with some really big hits.
It's a great finishing move.
Oh yeah. All right, let's take a look at the Druid. So for the Druid, I want to talk a little bit about one of the meta builds right now revolves around Cataclysm and kind of snapshotting issues that come up with that. And so for those of you who don't know what snapshotting basically means is for Cataclysm, which is one of their ultimate skills that has a duration. So you press the button, it summons a storm around you that lasts for some amount of time. And if you get a lot of that cooldown reduction and you can cast Cataclysm a second time before the first one expires, currently, on the live game, the second cast of Cataclysm will keep all of the bonuses and like bonus damage effects or guaranteed overpowers or whatever that was affecting the first one. And that was definitely not intended. That is not how we wanted that to work. We didn't want bonuses from one cast kind of instance to carry over to the next cast.
Budou upravovat, abys nemohl snapshotovat prostě u druidového kataklizmu. To znamená, že jestli nebudou přesouvat takové bonusy z jednoho castu na druhý. Vyspám při tom. No, chtělo by to hlavně ty vizuální ukázky, no, já taky trošku.
Big divide between the best and the optimal and like kind of the average normal case scenario.
Možná trošku zrychlíme a ukážeme si hlavně ty vizuální ukázky jako. Pak stejně natočím nějaké jako shrnutí, takže pojďme si ukázat jako hlavně ty zajímavé vizuální věci. Když jsme ve human formě, tak kritické údery nepřátelům z nature magií jako když 200krát někoho trefíš, tak ti to dá Anima of the Forest na 10 vteřin. A když máš na sobě ten Anima of the Forest, tak dostaneš Perfect Storm a Return Mighty pasivky. Takže měněj to docela zajímavě tuhletu helmu. A máš ještě teda bonusy na to, že jsi v té human formě. A potom tady ještě Storm Strike Damage je zvýšeno o 50% multiplikativně a zvyšuje damage, který o tebe target bere, na to je ostatní skilly o 40% multiplikativně na 6 vteřin. Tak a ukážeme si ještě tady nějaký to.
This is build defining in the way that Tempest Roar is for where damage they take from your other skill. Actually stack it up pretty quick. And see, once you get this online, you're going to be empowered with Earth and Might, and with Perfect Storm, and with Nature's Fury. You have all of this power.
Můžeš mít vlastně díky té helmě dvě další key pasivky, no.
Yeah.
Boss power slapped on top of that too.
Oh yeah, it is a lot when you get this empowered state.
To je docela zajímavý.
On to one of my favorite classes, the Necromancer. So Necromancer was probably
a posunu to zase dál trošku. Tak. Sanguivore Blade of Zir. Tady máš tvoje samoni. Aflikují nepřátelé s vampirickou kletbou, zkonzumování korpsky také kontributuje duši do vampirické kursky, která se může stakovat až na 20 soulů. Armáda mrtvol se nyní jako unleashne z těch duší z té vampirické kletby, způsobí, že armáda o smrti a duše udělují o 10% multikvalně zvýšený damage za každou tu uvolněnou duši a Skeleton Warrioři explodujou při smrti, udělují nějaký fyzický damage do okolních nepřátel, ztrácí 25% životů za vteřinu, když jsou v kombatu a Skeleton Mageové berou o 90% méně damage a udělují o 100% multiplikativně více damage.
Not you Blade of Zir, right? You get all those like skeleton and sacrifice. So you've got your skeleton warriors, the skirmishers, they run up there.
Okay, takže tvoji Skeleton Warrioři explodujou plus ta vampirická kletba z toho meče.
When you activate Army of the Dead, you just get the normal ones that are running around, but then they all you unleash a stream of them straight from you with the same.
No jasně no. Prostě máš vampirickou kletbu, jak kdyby na meči. Něco jak ten aspekt, že jo? Co býval. Nebo je možná ještě pořád.
It's great. All right. Next up, we've got the one we've been teasing for a bit. Thank you, Ruben. The Rogue.
Rogue.
Enhancement.
Tady máme Poison Trapa, vždycky udělá svoje plné poškození po dobu 3 vteřin a benefituje ze všech svých upgradeů, které jsou zvýšeny o 100% multiplikativně. Zároveň benefituje z combo pointů, nemá cooldown během Inner Sightu a cooldown je redukován preparationem. Poison Trapa burstuje, to je ten aspekt, za nějaký poison damage, když se triggerne. A pokud to kriticky zaútočí jakoby ten výbuch, tak udělíš o 40% multiplikativně zvýšený poison damage na 5 vteřin.
And then succumbs to the poison. It's awesome. All right.
Neviděli úplně.
Poison traps. I don't recommend it, but hey, if they do, they take a ton of poison damage.
Takže prostě hodíš poison trapy, má to mnohem lepší scaling ty poison trapy a zároveň teda scaluje z daleko víc jakoby věcí. A můžeš tomu resetovat líp cooldowny. Tak, sorcererka.
Build options. Level of arc. This is a unique helm that's going to empower your
unikátní helma. Ice Shardy se nyní rozdělují do dalších 2 shardů, udělují o 1,5% multiplikativní zvýšení damage za každý jakoby vykástený Ice Shard. Damage for each. Jo, pokaždé, když ten Ice Shard damageuje nepřítele na 5 vteřin, až do 75% multiplikativně, OK. A nepřátelé berou o 40% multiplikativně zvýšený damage na základě toho, jak moc jsou chilled nebo staggering a aplikuješ o 15% více chillu.
Hey, let's make sure this works in this hit the boss and you just feel so different. We want to
musíme počkat, už jsme na konci streamu, nebo jakoby už jsme dohnali živý stream.
All right, let's take a look at the Hail
of Vermilion
with these new ice shards in action. Right, so they fire out pretty quick. They fire out in a nice spread, and you can clear through a whole pack of skeletons with a single cast here.
Multi-shot.
Oh yeah,
multi-shot with ice shards.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right, and moving on to our final class here, the Spiritborn. So the Spiritborn was in a pretty good state. I mean, similar to Sorceress, where it didn't have these crazy overpowered builds, but we think it's in a relatively healthy spot, and we're just looking at empowering new build options and making tighter synergies between the builds and giving you some new tools to play with. With that in mind, we took a look at Rushing Claw. It's one of my favorite skills on the Spiritborn, but never really found its way into any of the most popular builds in the past couple seasons since Spiritborn was released. And we've updated the 2 upgrade choices to be kind of transformative. It's kind of if you pick one upgrade, the current one, Rushing Claws has 4 charges. And so when you use a charge, you kind of quickly dash through an enemy. And so you got 4 charges, you can spam it 4 times real quick. The other upgrade now has been reworked where it gains even more charges. It gains 12 charges.
Že trošičku dávají jiný upgradey pro ty jeho spely.
So really it has just one, but for every charge that it consumes, it deals massively increased damage and it hits a wider area. So now gaining cooldown reduction or gaining more charges actually just increases your damage output. And it promotes a very different play style for this.
A nové koncovky okromníkovo jsou. Zatím nic. To kdy bude? Už někdy v dubnu, tuším. No jako teďka bude testovací server ještě, ale to nevíme, kdy bude.
Additionally, we've looked at storm feathers and specifically how they interact with the new unique item, the Sunbird's Gorget, which I think we've got a picture
15.
of
dubna tady mají napsaný.
So the Sunbird's Gorget is a new unique amulet. This really works to synergize with the Eagle and Jaguar builds. So it says picking up a Storm Feather, which you can create in
sebrání Storm Featheru formuje ohnivou bouři kolem tebe na 8 vteřin, uděluje nějaké poškození pod každých 0,5 vteřiny a každých 5 dalších Storm Featherů, který zvedneš, tak intenzifikuje tu bouři ohnivou, zvyšuje damage o 100% multiplikativně, ale nerefreshuje dobu trvání. A ta ohnivá bouře je považována za Eagle, Jaguar a Storm Feather skill.
So you really want to collect as many Storm Feathers as possible in 8 seconds, and then it restarts. And also this fire.
Tak a mám tam aspekt. Rushing Claw uděluje o 30% multiplikativně zvýšený damage a to je jako ještě vylepšeno na základě kolik chargí to má, když to vykástil. Pokud 1, tak ti to vyhealuje o 15% maximální životu, pokud 2, tak máš garantovaný overpower, pokud 3, tak máš garantovaný critical strike a pokud 4 plus, tak to udeří víckrát. Jakoby znova, tak nejvíckrát, znova, prostě 2krát.
But if you're choosing the option where you spend each charge as you go, it's going to go through a bit of a cycle here. You're going to get an additional strike, then it's going to get a guaranteed crit, then it's going to get a guaranteed overpower, and when you just have 1 charge left, it's going to give you a nice chunky heal to help keep you in the fight.
Nice. There's a ton of versatility in there.
Yeah, lots of different ways to play, and it works great with either way that Rushing Claw now works. All right, let's take a look at the Sunbird's Gorget in action here, right? So you're moving along, you're picking up tons of these.
Sbíráš ty feathery, když se kolem tebe dělá prostě ta ohnivá bouře, no.
Different ways to scale it up, and it provides a nice kind of passive AoE around you as you're picking them up.
No, jako zajímavá kombinace, pokud hraješ Jaguara s ptákem, tak proč ne, že jo? A čím víc featherů máš, tím je to jakoby silnější.
All right, that's a lot. We got a lot of new class content coming for every class. We did get through all of them. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing all the new builds that these empower, how they modify old existing builds, and all the interesting combinations that I'm sure all of you will test out on the PTR and find out the most absolutely broken thing and let me know about it.
Yes, please let us know if you find something absolutely broken, which I'm sure you will. So thank you again, Charles, for walking us through all the different class changes. Again, this is we do plan on having patch notes along with the blog related to everything tied to PTR. So there's other changes that we didn't actually cover off in here. That will be on the Diablo4.com immediately after the stream.
Po konci streamu tam budou ty.
Inspect it, you know, do their theory crafting and everything.
29. apríla, posunutý to je.
We kind of want to know when PTR actually begins. PTR is starting next Tuesday.
Příští.
And this is, of course, PTR on PC Battle.net. So players will be able to jump in starting on the 11th and it'll run for a week.
11. do 18.
Also pre-download the PTR the day prior. So around Monday afternoon here in California. I translate that using some sort of time tool. That will be when players will be able to.
Takže budeš mít jakoby týden na to testování, no, ale bude tam boostovací NPCčko samozřejmě a tak dále.
Is of course the boost vendor. Merak will be available, which will be
tam
dancing
dostupný, no.
in town for everyone. But one thing we did want to note is that the boosts themselves will be available probably 2 days after the PTR actually begins. The reason behind this is actually a little bit tied to how Season 7 performed. One thing we allowed players to do was immediately boost the second they got into PTR, and we really didn't get that whole entire flow as we were kind of going through.
The headhunt and things like that. So we also just want to hear your feedback on the leveling process, right? This is why we run the PTR. We really want to hear your thoughts on how the sort of more uniform leveling feels, how the legendary drop rates feel. So that is really valuable to us for launching a really awesome Season 8 Return of Belial.
Yeah, and so after a couple days, Merak will be more than happy to take your Paragon levels to insane numbers. So PTR boosts will be available just a couple days after that. One other thing I do want to note is we will, of course, have our forums available and online for PTR. That is the best place to actually provide feedback. Of course, we do look in other places such as Reddit, Discord,
Jsem zvědavý, no. Plný patch notes by měly být po tom streamu. Já se na to kouknu během zítřejšího rána, něco pravděpodobně natočím, nějaký souhrn. Nebo tak. Uvidíme.
One other note is within the PTR, you guys may see a term called the Reliquary that may just kind of pop up here and there, and we haven't talked about the Reliquary, nor will the blog later today actually be talking about the Reliquary. I will say that you guys will hear more about the Reliquary before the start of Season 8 in itself, but for right now, ignore it.
Prej ještě uslyšíme o nějakém relikviáři v průběhu testování PTR, že se prej o tom dozvíme, až začne 8. sezóna. Co to je relikviář? Relikviář zní zajímavě. Možná něco jako idoly, třeba z bossů nějaký části, nebo z nějakých svědců. To by ti dalo nějaký permanentní bonusy nebo něco? To zní zajímavě.
And I know I have a lot. I'm trying to get through all my stuff. I know it's like I'm hungry. The last thing we did want to talk about is I've gotten asked a million times.
Okay, endgame, no way.
In chat, and it's related to a roadmap for Diablo 4. And I will say that we are actively working on a roadmap that we can share with you all, which is great because it gives you
pracují taky na roadmapě.
Opportunity to kind of see more of like the future vision of what's coming for Diablo 4. We do plan on actually having this roadmap out before Season 8.
Tam něco na odemku něčeho? No, já si myslím, no, že budeme sbírat nějaký, tak relikviář, že ho se používal na nějaký části svědců nebo něco takového, takže pravděpodobně z nějakých bossů nebo z něčeho, prostě v nějakém novém endgameu se bude sbírat něco, co ti bude dávat nějaký bonusy a tak. No, jasně.
These more public-facing roadmaps, and that's something that we want to do here, so that you guys have that ability of being able to see what's coming out for Diablo 4 and more exciting news related to it. So
zatím docela dobrý, jako spousta novinek.
We have Q&A. We want to jump into Q&A here really quickly. So if you guys do have any questions or anything, of course, we have our chat available on the Twitch link for Diablo. So feel free to jump in and ask any questions. I know we always queue it up with one question specifically. And do we have a question slide here? There we go. How does party play work with lair bosses? We kind of covered this a little bit, but I don't know if you guys want to go into specifically more details on this.
Yeah, I can jump into that.
Já myslím, že jsme taky jako se dozvěděli všechno, co potřebujeme. Teď už budou jenom zase takový nějaký dotazy komunity, což mě upřímně moc nezajímá. Tak co si o tom myslíte, chat? Co na to říkáte? Já si myslím, že představuje docela dost novinek. Jakože samozřejmě teď se to může zdát jako dost, uvidíme, co to reálně bude znamenat. A jak to bude zpracovaný. Jo, ale hele, nový itemy, nový bossové, potenciálně, to vypadá na novou endgame mechaniku, přepracovaný starý bossové, nový jakoby úplně ladder, takže určitě v tomhletom by to mohlo být zajímavý. Víme teda, že to bude pomalejší všechno, levlení a tak dále. Mnohem. To je samozřejmě nepříjemný. Nový sezónní síly, boss síly, což zní docela zajímavě.
One thing that the revamp flow does, I will touch on,
jako, až to uvidím, až si to zahraju, tak třeba budu mluvit jinak, ale teďka se mi to zdá jako docela zajímavý. Minimálně na úrovni minulý sezóny, jako 7. sezóny. Ještě bych řekl, že jako o chlup lepší určitě.
We do expect some amount of the chain bossing to come down a little bit because a lot more of the resources are being consumed when opening those chests. So it's not a direct answer to your question. I think it's an interesting idea.
No jasně, no, tak chápu lihovník určitě jako... Určitě už to mělo být v té expanzi upřímně. Jako ten počet těch novinek, který říkají, že chcou přidat této sezóně, se skoro rovná tomu, co přidali k expanzi, takže jako v rámci mechanik, takže to jako chápu, no.
Not even death can save you from me.
Bad MF.
And waypoints on every character every single season.
Čau.
I can answer that one too. Yeah, this is something.
No, takže jako poslal jsem ti 5 kilo. Romane, děkuju moc, kámo, protože to neukázalo. Děkuju moc všem, kteří tady něco poslali. Klasicky, moje alerty nefungujou. Moc si to vážím. Díky moc. Doufám, že nikdo jiný už nic neposlal, protože zjevně mi nefungují alerty, nebo jsem z toho nevšiml. Díky. To podívám ještě. Ono to má přehrát nějakou animaci, víš totiž, ale jakoby zjevně se tomu nechce.
For sure staying over. I will say like the witch powers are most definitely like something that aren't carrying over completely over to the future seasons. But one thing in regards to at least the Tree of Whispers is that like we have a bunch of new NPCs there. We redid the layout there. Yep. That is made that as a
Nevím, kdy to zjistím, bohužel, ale moc děkuju všem, co jste něco posílali. Romane, díky moc.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I can speak a bit to the seasonal powers. As we said, a lot of those witchcraft powers are specific to season 7. That is true. They are not necessarily coming back in season 8. But we do hear that feedback, right? I think they got a really positive reception. Yep. A lot of like the poison frog, one of my favorites, the fire bats, and all kinds of the other things that are very visually flashy and just a lot of fun to play with. We hear that, and that definitely helps us to inform like making future content. In the past, we've done that where we've taken some favorite seasonal mechanics, put them on items to return. I can't speak to any particular plans, but just know that we do hear this feedback. And it'll definitely help us to help craft content in the future.
Budou tam tady mít co pán v komentářích, ptal jsme se z ně. Ne, nebudu, Pavle. Teď to říkali zrovna, že to prostě je sezónní věc, která zmizí, ale že jako se na to dívají, jak ty věci přivádět postupně zpátky a že jako je možný, že zas prostě do budoucna přibude nějaký nový item, který bude mít nějakou sílu, která připomíná nebo je přímo skopírovaná z nějaký ty předchozí sezóny. Takže je možný, že třeba přijde nějaký nový prsten nebo něco, unique třeba, který bude fungovat jako nějaká ta witch power. To jako je možný, ale samozřejmě tyhle ty sezónní síly se vždycky měnějí, že jo, na základě té sezóny. A do standardu se nepřevádí. Kluči jsou Akon Bound? No, to je hodně dobrý, no. Že už nebudeš moc pay to win mythic. OK. Layer klíče Akon Bound. OK. To je zajímavý, no. Můžete dát lajky. Přesně jak píše Roman. Děkuju moc. Pokud se vám líbí to, že streamuju jednou za rok, tak dejte like. Díky. Na YouTube samozřejmě. Dneska jsem trošku ve stresu, protože jsem mi tady něco podělal v bytě, ale to bude příště zase lepší.
To ensure that they just don't get one shot too fast with some classes or builds I can't talk today.
Trivializing. Yeah.
I can't even talk.
I think this is a great question. It's something we actually talk about on the team a bunch. And from our perspective, adding something like resilience would sort of devalue that power progression. Like we feel like it sort of disservices that sort of 0 to hero. Once Belial was really hard, but now I've gotten so strong I can just crush him. That said, we do think that the level of one-shotting bosses that has been happening is a little bit too much. There isn't enough of a journey to get to a point where I can just stomp on Varshan or I can stomp on the Penitent Knight. So what we have done is, like Derek mentioned earlier in the stream, we've massively buffed a lot of these bosses. Like, so much so...
Hodně buffnuli ty leather bosse. Že nebude tak snadný je prostě one-shotovat a tak dále. Jako pořád to půjde, ale bude to projít delší doba, než se dostaneš do úrovně, kdyby se byl schopný one-shotovat.
Has seen quite a buff. And that should mean that that journey to getting to a place where you're really farming some of these bosses is a lot more fulfilling, but it's longer also. You're not just like walking into Torment 1 and one-shotting Varshan.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into what I talked about with some of the outlier builds that were just Bloodwave Necro, prime example of being something where you get one item and then suddenly you can one-shot everything. It's really not, it doesn't promote the best gameplay. Like it's just, like, it's fun for a little bit to go in and one-shot everything, but that's something we think it's much more engaging to have a little bit of back and forth, and you're not just going in and stomping them, but you do feel powerful, feel some power progression, and as you get more powerful and more gear,
jsem frustrovaný z toho, že jsem něco zaplatil, budu si muset platit ještě nový dostal obsah, které jsou byly, no jasně, no, já tě chápu úplně.
Yeah, and I'll also say like, part of how we originally set up the boss ladder, it really did encourage the one-shotting behavior, right? Like,
jako to Diablo je prostě takový kolotoč. To se prostě furt mění tam a zpátky a prostě balancujou něco dopředu, dozadu, víš co, upravujou v jednu sezónu, ti dají strašně moc síly, druhou sezónu je to už moc, tak ti budou se zpomalovat dvojnásobně. To přijde, že si furt vracíme, že prostě ve čtvrtý sezóně jsme byli moc slabí, v pátý se to trošku zlepšilo, v šestý jsme byli ještě trošku lepší, sedmý jsme úplně moc silný, teď se zase vracíme na úroveň, nevím, té čtvrtý sezóny, že to je furt takový, se furt soustředí na nějaký balancování a takovýhle hovadiny, ale jako reálně by bylo lepší, kdyby se soustředil na ten obsah. A... Si upřímně myslím, že jako hráčům by bylo víc jedno, že tam jsou buildy, které dávají miliardy, než právě to, že tam není ten obsah. No. Jako, nemyslím si to, jsem o tom přesvědčený. Prostě vždycky bude v nějakých hrách, že jeden build bude rozbitej a druhý bude k hovnu.
She's in an interesting spot now where she's kind of like the pinnacle of the season's journey a lot of times, and that's something we can definitely think about, especially with this revamped flow of being able to summon the bosses. So we can definitely take that into consideration. That'd be a lot of fun.
Quick question related to the Spiritborn. This is from the Schwab. Does the new Russian Claw aspect power give you all the previous bonuses at 4+ charges, or just the extra cast?
It's just the extra one. So so if you're casting it at 4 or more charges, it only hits an extra time. It does not get guaranteed crit or overpower or heal you. It's you kind of either progress through one benefit at a time, or you just get...
No jasně, Lukáši, no, chápu. Mně to je jako vesměs taky jako jedno. Samozřejmě zabíjí to prostě nějakou tu možnost těch žebříčků a těch věcí, ale to už je jako na další diskuzi, no. Furt jsem neslyšel nic o žebříčcích, jestli se do té hry vrátí nebo ne. Furt jsem neslyšel, jestli se tam vrátí Gauntlet, který odebrali nebo ne. Víš co, 2 sezóny mlčej po obsahu, který tam byl a odstranili ho. To je taky divný. Já to chápu lihovníku a to mám úplně stejně.
That is sort of why we have the boss ladder, to give you more deterministic, or maybe not deterministic, but targeted ways to find some of the uniques you're looking for. This lets us have a lot of different uniques, but things that you actually have to target. The other thing I'll just say too is like part of the game is random items and figuring out how to
rád lajky, ne dislikey, hovada.
So like we don't want to get to
Kdo tam dal ty 2 dislikey? Lajky jste měli rád.
I get all the uniques I want, and then I'm sort of done with the game, and it's just sort of this deterministic track through getting the pieces that you want. But that said, like we're always sort of listening to the feedback.
Pones cokoliv pozitivního, nebo už na to kašlem. Čauky, hele jo. Dneska to docela šlo, jako samozřejmě nevíme, jak to reálně bude vypadat, ale předělávají ladder systém, přidávají 3 nový bosse do ladderu, vlastně předělávají i ultimátní boss už nebude Lilith, ale bude tam takový prostě Belial z Diablo 3 a takový obrovský boss, což vypadá docela cool. Předělávají i celý ten systém, jak vlastně funguje ten ladder, jak fungují klíče už budou account bound, nebude s nima tradovat. A bude tam spousta nových jakoby itemů, bude tam sezónní síla zajímavá, že z bossů budeš získávat jejich schopnosti a používat je. Můžeš je i kombinovat mezi sebou různě pomocí různých modifierů, takže tohle to vypadá dost jako solidně. Plus už jako líkujou nějaké informace o nový endgame relikviář, který nám zatím prý nic neřeknou, ale nejspíš se bude jednat o nějakou prostě novou endgame aktivitu.
And so we said, well, let's kind of scrap that existing effect and how can we better support that? Let's take another try at this.
Jo, Lukáš, já to chápu, jako já to víceméně mám jako podobně.
To find those underused uniques that really maybe don't find a home, we're going to constantly be reevaluating them and seeing how we can kind of plus them up and make them achieve.
Jo, jako zítra určitě o tom udělám nějaký souhrnný video. Něco si o tom jako natočíme, podíváme se na to. Zatím jsem docela pozitivní v ohledě toho, co představili. Samozřejmě uvidíme, jak to bude v realitě. No. Pohodě. Tato sezóna actually vypadá dobře. A hlavně v ní přidávají věci, které zůstanou i po té sezóně, protože ten boss ladder systém bude inkludovaný i do standardu. Což je fajn. Já jsem taky zvědavý na ty Last Epoch sezóny, no. Hodně. Akorát doufám, že to nebudou dělat, jak to dělali doteď, že jako jedna sezóna za rok, protože to jim prostě ty lidi se na to zase vyserou. Oni potřebují 3měsíční cyklus, jak má Diablo teď aktuálně jediný, protože Path of Exile to taky nedává. Nebo aspoň nějaký eventy, jak má Path of Exile zajímavý. No, hele, už to okecávají, řešej blbosti a to mě upřímně netrápí, Q&A skončila. Já to tady nechám, protože mám ještě před sebou tady řešení nějakého toho svého problému a plus tady musím natočit nějaký videa, takže já vám děkuju za pozornost, budu moc rád, když tady necháte nějaký like, budu moc rád, když se podíváte na našeho partnera X-Zone, který teda vydal, jak už jsem tady říkal dneska 2krát, novou knížku. Ultimátní průvod se střílečkami mezi rokem 1992 až 2002. Odkaz najdete samozřejmě v popisku videa na X-Zone, anebo když napíšete do chatu vykřičník X-Zone. A to je víceméně všechno. Já se budu těšit na vaše reakce u zítřejšího souhrnu. Patrně se k němu dostanu až teda zítra a odpoledne by někdy byl ten souhrn. Jo, kolem té 4. budu se snažit samozřejmě dřív, když to půjde, ale tak znáte to, jo, v tu sobotu většinou videa nevydávám, takže uvidím, jak to budu stíhat všechno. A musím dodělat video, který už mám rozstříhaný. Tak jo, hele, díky moc, díky za pozornost, sorry za dnešní patálie, že jsem tady chvilku byl, chvilku nebyl, prostě občas se něco posere, takže to tak jako dopadne, no. Ale děkuju a mějte se.